The House and the Senate are back to kick off a lame duck session of Congress that will include a short but consequential to-do list. At the top of the list is government funding. You'll recall, before leaving to go back to campaign in their districts, they passed a continuing resolution, short-term funding bill that actually expires on December the 20th. Now, Republicans will want to extend federal funding until early 2025. While Democrats want to lock in some of their spending priorities for next year before they lose power. So how might this battle play out? What is at stake? Well, joining me now to discuss this, Congressman Buddy Carter, a member of the House Budget Committee and the Committee on Energy and Commerce. He represents the 1st Congressional District of Georgia. Congressman Carter, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. Good to be with you.
And congratulations on your reelection and returning to Congress in the 119th. That will begin in January.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very humble, very excited.
So let's talk about these next 2 months. Not as dangerous as many lame duck sessions have been. I've had a few conversations with the Speaker. He feels pretty confident with President Trump looking on that it's going to be somewhat orderly. But budget funding is going to be a big fight because the Democrats, they're going to want to fund some of their projects knowing that they're going to lose the levers of government after the end of the year. So what do you anticipate?
First of all, before we get started, and certainly that's going to be one of our priorities, the top priority, but we've got to look at disaster funding. And remember, Tony, we've had a rough go of it here this summer in South Georgia and North Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina. We had major hurricanes. We had Hurricane Helene that caused devastation that was just some of the worst devastation we've ever seen. I've lived in South Georgia all my life, and I've witnessed many hurricanes, but I've never seen the devastation that we saw with Helene. We had Tropical Storm Debbie that had a lot of flooding. We had Hurricane Milton that caused Florida a lot of damage as well. So we've got a lot that we've got to do in the way of disaster funding. That's got to be the first thing that we take care of. We got to make sure FEMA is funded, and I think they are, but we got to make sure SBA, they definitely got to be funded as well. So putting that package together is going to be very important. Now, as far as our budget goes,
Congressman, let me stop you there right there, buddy. Let's talk about that because that's I agree with you. In fact, we had you on the program from your district as you were surveying the damage right after Helene. So let's talk about how that package comes together, because we know that there's oftentimes that's where politics are played and people will stick things in there that are unrelated to the disaster, directly to the disaster. So how do you see that unfolding?
Sorry, Tony, I missed some of that, but I really do think that we're going to have to put together a package, and we're going to have it in block grants. Who better understands where the need is than the states do? And keep in mind, our ag is the #1 industry in the state of Georgia. And look, this could have an impact not only on America, but on the world. I mean, the American farmer feeds the world, and we need to keep that in mind. It also was devastating to our timber industry. Georgia's the #1 forestry state in the nation. So our timber industry took a big hit, just devastation that was unbelievable. So all of that has got to be addressed, and we've got to make sure that we don't lose these farmers, that we don't lose these tree farmers as well. We need them to sustain and to continue on. That's going to be extremely important.
Yeah, and in a responsible way, and that's just going to have to be something that is shepherded through very carefully. So that is a part of the discussion, but the bigger issue is going to be the continuation of government funding. How do you see that playing out?
Two things. First of all, we want to cut spending, and I think Republicans are united in that. But secondly, we want to put President Trump in the best position that we can in order to make sure that he's able to deliver on his campaign promises. And that's going to be very important for us. I think we're in good shape. I think that, we're in sync with President Trump, and we all understand what our goal is. But we want to make sure that we're giving him the opportunity to be able to deliver on the policies that he has promised the American people. And essentially, they're the same policies that we have promised the American people as well.
how do you see in terms of the spending cuts? Now, the Senate's going to want to probably boost the spending because they're going to want some of their pet projects that probably are going to be cut next year. They're going to want an infusion of cash. The margins remain narrow in the House. Again, how difficult is it going to be to come up with a responsible funding mechanism? And then secondly, I know you're just returned today to Capitol Hill, and I assume that there may be a conference meeting tonight. Has there been discussion in terms of, is it going to be a short-term continuing resolution into the first part of next year, or is it going to go beyond the first 100 days?
That's to be determined. We haven't discussed that, right. And you're absolutely right. That is going to be one of the things that we discuss in our conference meetings, whether, and a lot of that will depend on the new administration and what they want. If President Trump indicates that he'd like to just, carry it on for 100 more days and give him a chance to put his fingerprints on it, his administration to put their fingerprints on it, then that may be the route that we go. The good news is that we've got a number of options. That's one thing that we can do. We could, try to work something out with the Democrats. And we knew this was going to happen. We knew that however the elections turned out would determine how we would address this budget. And that you're right, it's still going to be tight. We're still going to have to work with the Democrats. We're going to have probably a 5-seat majority, maybe, and then in the Senate, there's still, we're going to have 53, I think, senators, but at the same time, it's still going to take 60 votes. So it's going to be compromised. There's no question about that.
I mean, Congressman Carter, I should point out that the House Republicans already passed about 70% of government funding, those bills, through prior to the election. The Senate hasn't passed any. So we've seen this over and over again. They try to jam the House at the end of the year. In previous years, they've tried to get an omnibus, but my understanding is an omnibus is off the table. Is that your understanding?
Absolutely. That is my understanding, and I'm going to be holding us to that. I, for one, do not want to see that happen, and I don't think really anybody wants to see that happen in the Republican conference. That would be the worst case scenario for all of us.
And one other bill that has to happen, we talked about the disaster relief funding to refill the coffers of at least Small Business Administration, but then we've got the funding bills as funding ends December the 20th, federal government. But we also have the National Defense Authorization Act that has to pass. The left is accusing Republicans of injecting culture wars into this bill as the reason the Senate hasn't adopted the House version, so there's a conference going on. But isn't it really the Democrats who have injected the culture wars into our military, and the Republicans are just trying to clean it up?
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out, Tony, because you are absolutely spot on. That is exactly what has happened. And, that's not what the military is about. And that's the point we're trying to make in the Republican conference is that, guys, this is not what we're supposed to be doing in the military. The military is supposed to be protecting, and the military is supposed to be preparing to fight and protect our country. And all this DEI and everything else that's being included in there has no place whatsoever in our military.
Well, Congressman Buddy Carter, I know that the Republicans got this message, but the American people want you to hold the line. So hold the line going into this lame duck session of Congress, and we look forward to the 119th to unified leadership following the agenda that was laid out to the American people.
Absolutely, Tony. That's going to be our goal and our mission.
All right. Congressman Buddy Carter, thanks so much for joining us today. Always great to see you.
Thank you, sir.